It is vital that those who have answers share them openly. When someone asked why the feminine principle seems to predominate in the temple's design, the answer was simple. Every one of us, male or female, has a mother, and there are more women on earth than men, for without women there would be no life. Physically, women bear the organs of creation, ovaries, womb, breasts, while men are, in that sense, incomplete. Yet balance remains. Our world needs both principles and harmony. When we reflect on how women have been marginalized, despised for their natural cycles, barred from leading prayer, branded unclean despite being created by Allah's own design, we see the urgency of restoring women to their rightful place. Ancient Egyptian monuments show man and woman side by side, equal bearers of soul and spirit. That equality must be renewed today. The old biblical tale of Adam's creation also strains logic. How could Adam exist without a mother, without breastfeeding, without the physical means to nurture him? And if God created us in his image, each of us bearing a navel, then perhaps God too has a mother. These questions reveal the patriarchal distortions of European Christianity. That man club theology led to the burning of women as witches, the systemic abuse and rape of women, and centuries of misogyny. We must overturn that legacy. Opening doors for women, honoring the mothers who gave us life, teaching our children to respect the feminine, these are not mere courtesies but necessities for the survival of our humanity. Elijah Muhammad proclaimed that no nation can rise above its women. He foretold a resurrected community led by a wisdom bearer, who embodies the prophesied teacher with the tablets of light, fire to enlighten us and water to cool our excess. As more sisters step forward to answer questions only they can answer, how it feels to bear life within them, the mysteries of the lunar cycle, the pain and ecstasy of birth, the world will witness a renaissance of true balance. We learn from experience that there is no single way to be a woman. Just as pancakes taste different in different kitchens, so do the hearts and minds of countless sisters. Yet when a woman brings children into the world as a young mother, her body is naturally equipped for the task. Over time, however, mixing her life with too many different partners can disrupt her cellular harmony, just as we sometimes absorb the traits of those we live with most. It is no slight to recognize that women's biology and intuition surpass our own. After all, they nurture and teach us from our earliest days. When they begin to think and speak like men, we all lose. Thus, restoring the feminine principle does not diminish the masculine, rather, it completes us. When Elijah Muhammad said that the nation cannot rise above its women, he pointed to the truth that only by honoring the goddess, the mother of us all, will we once again give birth to gods. That prophecy is alive today in the gatherings where men and women unite, question and answer, teach and learn. As more sisters claim the front of the stage to explain what we men cannot, what it feels like when life stirs within them, how the soul of a child is carried on a man's spirit, we shall see the dawn of a world reborn in true equality. I remember watching a movie once, Ghost Dog, and there's a scene where Whitaker's character is pulled over by a female gangster turned cop. He's bleeding, she questions him, and he fires back, "You want to be equal? I made it equal." That moment forced me to think about what true equality really means. I'm not saying women can't do everything men can, they absolutely can, but there are certain things at which men naturally excel, and certain things at which women do. Take bodybuilding, for example. A 25-year-old man and a 25-year-old woman might both train with identical regimens, but thanks to higher testosterone levels, the man will typically gain more muscle mass. That biological balance exists for a reason, yet somewhere along the way we've lost sight of it. Today, everything feels out of balance. People are acting out, relationships are strained, and gender roles have been upended so completely that we no longer recognize the harmony that once existed. I believe that restoring women to their rightful place, as matriarchs, as co-rulers, would help reinstate that balance. Look at Oprah Winfrey. Decades ago, few believed a black woman could rise to the heights she has. No white woman, no Celtic woman achieved what Oprah did. In a sea of negative and derogatory images of black people on television, she shone like a beacon, reminding us of the immense value women bring to society. Justice, too, has lost its way. True justice is doing what is right, nothing more and nothing less. If a child steals a candy bar, we don't chop off his arm. We might take away privileges or require restitution. Yet too often we see people punished far beyond their crimes, tarnished reputations, false accusations on national TV, SWAT teams descending with guns pointed at children, and for what? No evidence, no physical proof, just a presumption of guilt. True justice would be, show me the evidence. If there is none, let him go. On a personal level, I've also wrestled with the language we use when we speak of God. When someone says Most High, the mental image that comes to many is a pale, Northern European man, because centuries of art and film have taught us to imagine Jesus that way. Yet if Jesus appeared today as an Italian boy in the park, Would you expect his father to be anything other than another white man? Why do we impose a Celtic or Caucasian image on a figure from the Middle East? If we can unlearn that, perhaps we can rediscover a truer, more universal vision of the divine. I've studied many spiritual traditions, Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, but I always return to my African roots. So much of what later religions teach was taken from ancient Egypt and the Kushite kingdoms, the positions in ritual prayer, the symbols, the philosophies. Why not go straight to the source? Our ancestral teachings hold the answers to the racial and cultural divisions sown by colonialism. We were here first, one family, before European powers partitioned us into tribes and races. That theme of separation shows up again in discussions about sexuality. Ancient Africans understood that hormones in utero could influence sexual orientation. High estrogen levels in the womb could feminize a genetically male fetus, just as testosterone turns a default female form male. Our ancestors recognized that homosexuality had two streams, those innately born with a same-sex orientation, and pleasure seekers who simply chase erotic sensation regardless of gender. Both exist, and neither is a moral failing, they are part of the natural spectrum of humanity. Colonialism and imported religions imposed rigid gender hierarchies on us, teaching that women must submit to men even though men rely on women for life, home, and emotional sustenance. Traditional African marriages were based on dowries and mutual obligations, not on the fanciful notion of romance flushed out by Hollywood's rosy myths. When men truly respect women's power, honoring them as partners, co-creators, matriarchs, our families and communities thrive. We lost our balance when we forgot these lessons, that men and women are different but equal, that justice demands proportionality and evidence, that the divine transcends our racial pretensions, that our spiritual heritage predates and surpasses imported doctrines, and that human sexuality is a nuanced spectrum, not a simple binary. Reclaiming these truths from our past is the path forward, toward balance, harmony, and true equality. When two men in a relationship court each other, the dynamic often mirrors traditional heterosexual dating. The grand gestures, the compliments, the pursuit of respect and admiration. There are no walls, no rigid boundaries. Just as we praise a woman for her class, men praise each other for their character. This approach demands effort, nothing comes easy. Respect for one another's body and spirit remains paramount, and one does not simply expect affection without proving their sincerity. Women have long been celebrated for a unique allure, a blend of style, flair, and emotional depth that amplifies their experiences. Yet a new generation of men, shaped by evolving social and genetic influences, exhibit a similar assertiveness and expressiveness in both romance and fashion. As society shifts, the line between traditionally masculine and feminine behaviors becomes blurred, giving rise to relationships that transcend older stereotypes. Another layer of complexity emerges in children born with intersex traits, those who carry both male and female characteristics. Sometimes, parents decide on early surgery to remove one set of organs, unaware of how deeply this choice will impact their child's identity. Many intersex individuals recount feeling neither fully male nor female, struggling with imposed decisions about their bodies and desires. Their heightened sensitivity to both masculine and feminine energies can manifest in flamboyance, creativity, and an acute awareness of color, art, and emotion. History and religion have often demonized these individuals. Ancient civilizations honor the intersex as gatekeepers to other realms, wielding their unique energies to open portals to distant galaxies or alternate dimensions. Medieval Europe, threatened by this power, branded them as heretics, outlawing and persecuting them to preserve social and religious order. Tales like Gomorrah's destruction, or biblical injunctions against deviance, were tools to suppress their influence. In both ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, rulers like Hatshepsut or Nefertiti may have possessed hermaphroditic attributes, remembered only in veiled myth. Their possible ability to channel dual energies was feared by later powers, prompting the creation of sacred texts that painted them as aberrations rather than bearers of cosmic wisdom. The narrative continues to shape gender relations today. Women, too, once held the mantle of warrior, revered for their physical and spiritual strength. Over time, emotional submission was valorized, compassion and love became prized virtues, leading to the erosion of women's autonomy. The advent of exogenous hormones, so-called steroids, further skewed the balance, amplifying male aggression and pushing women into dependency on men for protection and provision. As male power solidified, female rebellion was cast as sinful, relegating women to secondary roles. Yet the subconscious mind remains potent, a reservoir of ancestral instincts. A woman's hidden desires, whether to nurture or to resist, can shape her choices in love and motherhood, sometimes even influencing fertility or miscarriage outside conscious awareness. Similarly, Men who rely on fleeting pleasures, heavy drinking, casual sex, often find their bodies and relationships deteriorating. Our modern discourse, largely shaped by Western norms, has estranged many African and African American communities from their ancestral ways. Public schools and media reinforce a singular cultural standard, eroding traditional values of chastity, community, and reverence for the body. This not only pressures individuals to conform but creates rifts between black men and women, who find themselves speaking different emotional languages. Ultimately, the story of courtship, identity, and power is as old as humanity itself. It weaves through the stars and into our collective subconscious, reminding us that love, respect, and understanding are the bridges that connect us across genders, identities, and generations. I see the big picture. She's already been hurt, carrying baggage from choices she made, multiple relationships, responsibilities she didn't ask for, and now she criticizes me simply because I refuse to live by her terms. She's upset that, unlike her, I'm not chasing distractions or fathering children indiscriminately. Instead, I choose a different path, and that makes me a problem. This mindset reflects a deeper issue in our community, where many women have internalized foreign values and judge men unjustly when they don't conform to those values. Consider the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. Its name comes from the Greek translation of the original title, which described the journey from one existence to another. Egyptians buried treasures with the deceased because they believed these possessions would accompany the spirit into the afterlife. Gold, they knew, was eternal. Huge solid gold sarcophagi were prepared so that, no matter how many generations passed, descendants could return and live off those treasures. But before they could reclaim anything, conquerors stole tombs and placed artifacts in museums, severing our connection to that wisdom. In our time, too, death has been misrepresented. Whereas Egyptians celebrated death as a transition, marking it with elaborate 70-day rituals, masks on sarcophagi to preserve the likeness of the departed, and open casket viewings to honor the living memory, modern horror films and sensationalist media implant subconscious fears of suffering and decay. Yet on the other side, our ancestors exist joyfully, seeing the full scope of reality beyond our limited physical lives. They long to guide us. We only need to attune our frequency to theirs, to ask for their counsel instead of pleading aimlessly for divine intervention. Our ancients taught that after 40 days, a soul enters a tutelary world, awaiting rebirth. They explained that spirits, even before a child is conceived, hover near their future womb, ready to incarnate. As we age, we grow more open to that presence. People mistake inner dialogue for madness, but it's often our soul speaking from beyond. Our genetic programming once destined us to live 120 years, as designed by ancient scientists. Now, thanks to modern diets and stress, we barely reach 60 or 70. Spirits linger, saying, "I'm ready to go," but our bodies hold on, and they patiently work to free us. The Egyptians called the afterlife the underworld. Conquerors misinterpreted it as hell. But it was simply another plane of existence, accessible through rituals and language our people perfectly mastered. We knew the unseen. They labeled it demonic. We had detailed records of heavenly realms in Babylonian and Egyptian texts. Caucasians, lacking first-hand experience, wrote myths without real knowledge. We also honored our ancestors through carved images, idols, long before cameras existed. Those carvings were stories, not objects of blind worship. Later, Europeans stole these statues and claimed they were pagan idols, twisting their sacred meaning. They suppressed our language and refused to define our own words, forcing us to rely on their distorted etymologies. From ABCs to dictionaries, they trapped us in spellings and definitions that concealed our heritage. In love, too, we've been deceived. We confuse lust, sexual pleasure, for genuine love. Ancient teachings identified 12 forms of love, each serving different needs: divine love, familial love, self-love, even love of simple pleasures like ice cream. Condensing all these into one narrow concept sets us up for disappointment when a partner can't meet every expectation. Real love is a verb, an action grounded in unity. Without it, all our rituals and temple offerings are meaningless. The true teacher said that without love and unity, everything is in vain, that it would have been better never to have existed than to live incoherently. Our modern distractions, stress, toxic diets, fragmented families, cloud our connection to our ancestors. We forget that they walk beside us, waiting to guide us back to harmony. We must reclaim our language, restore our rituals, and practice the divine principles of love and unity. Only then will we transcend the illusions imposed upon us, stepping into the full power our ancestors bequeathed us and opening the gates to the true hereafter. Recently, a student challenged me, must an elder have accomplished things worthy of respect to deserve it, or does mere longevity confer authority? His debate partner argued that an elder's experience alone makes their perspective valid, but my own observation of long-lived people who've done questionable things made me question that. Drawing on lessons from our master teacher, I explained that respect is a two-way street. Elders deserve deference, but they must also earn our regard by the way they conduct themselves. Young fools become old fools, too. Surviving to 85 doesn't automatically wash away a lifetime of manipulations or deceit. You can't engage in every dispute with an elder, or anyone, without risking your own peace of mind. Verbal confrontations rarely resolve anything. They only store up resentments that resurface years later. Experience matters, but it isn't just a function of age, it's what you do with what you've lived through. A 21-year-old soldier may see more in 4 years in a war zone than someone sheltered in one neighborhood for decades, but it's the lessons integrated from those experiences, not the experiences themselves, that produce wisdom. If a man has spent his entire adult life repeating the same mistakes, dating the same wrong sort of women at 21 and 45, he hasn't learned anything despite his years. Our master teacher set up a community of young disciples who learned this balance, to respect elders while demanding that elders respect them in turn. Sometimes people wield the elder card to stifle your voice. You have the right, and the responsibility, to stand up for yourself without descending into disrespect. Remember, everything that happens to you is under your control. If you choose to walk away rather than argue, you preserve your own peace. In many African traditions, elders were the keepers of communal wisdom. The hunter, the metalsmith, the carpenter passed on their trial and error lessons so the next generation could stand on their shoulders. Grandmothers even longed for grandchildren to nurture, both to stay connected and to pass on discipline and morals. But over time in America, that reverence has eroded. Too many elders end up in nursing homes, outsourced to paid caregivers. We've lost sight of how precious intergenerational bonds once were. Our teachings today may feel confusing only because they've been filtered through centuries of foreign doctrines: Christianity out of Rome, Islam out of Arabia, Judaism out of Lebanon, each layered over the original spiritual sciences of ancient Egypt. When Dr. York introduced WAPO, What a Person Ought, he first tried presenting it in its full Egyptian Nubian form, but without the internet or schools willing to teach such depths, he had to bridge it with the most familiar religions of the day. Thus the Nubian Islamic Hebrews and the Sahara law community blended Islam's scriptural rigor with Egyptian cosmology in the 1960s. Later iterations wore the garb of Christianity or Judaism only to make the truths accessible. Today we jump from school to school, Black Christian, Black Muslim, Black Hebrew, because what we've inherited is a watered-down story told through foreign eyes. But the original principles remain: ask questions, seek facts, respect those who have earned it, and never mistake longevity alone for wisdom. In 2025, I find myself able to survey every school of thought: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Masonry, the Eastern Star, the Shriners, simultaneously. What happens when you meet someone who has truly mastered each of these traditions? That person earns the title Master Teacher, because they have internalized every system that emerged from Caucasian societies, and, tracing them back, all these schools return to Africa. Consider, one who masters Judaism is called a rabbi; in Christianity, a minister, preacher, or reverend; in Islam, an imam. Yet each of these figures focuses on a single tradition. The master teacher, by contrast, masters them all and then guides students through every path. He provides each school's teachings so that we can experience them firsthand: Christian preaching, Islamic ritual, Jewish liturgy, Masonic symbolism, Shriners' charity, and more. Only by mastering every school can the master teacher say, "I have been sick with Christianity, bedridden with Islam, confined by Judaism, I have felt your illness." But having found the cure, he becomes a surgeon of the mind, diagnosing where each of us is stuck and helping us to heal. When cast in doubt, we demand proof. We ask, if there was a tribal Israel, why do Egyptian temple walls say nothing of Israelite bondage? Why do Babylonian reliefs omit the exile under Nebuchadnezzar? Where is the Roman record of high taxes on Israelites? These physical records exist in Egypt, Babylon, Greece, Rome, places we can still visit today, but nowhere do the walls speak of these biblical narratives. In contrast, the Bible names real locations, giving it surface legitimacy, yet its stories leave no archaeological trace. Thus, we question the historicity of sacred texts passed down for 400 or 500 years. African civilizations, Egypt, Sumer, Nubia, first occupied those lands, yet European translators framed the versions of these books. How can one have God's unalterable word in multiple versions? African Americans must seek texts in their own languages and perspectives, rather than accept only European viewpoints. We notice, few Chinese convert to Islam, few Africans fully embrace Catholicism. Religions still largely reflect their birthplaces: Italians and Greeks for Catholicism, Middle Easterners for Buddhism, Indians and Arabs for Islam. When the majority of a faith doesn't look like you or respect your features, how can you claim its lineage without scrutiny? We trace symbols, too. The ancient Egyptian black sun, a four-pointed symbol of hydrogen and helium combustion, of dark energy interacting with the atmosphere, gave rise to the swastika. This emblem traveled from Egypt to Hindu Bali, to Chinese Buddhist temples, where Buddhism was introduced by an Indian prince, Gautama, not a Chinese, and eventually was co-opted by Hitler's Nazi party. Hitler understood the black sun's esoteric meaning and gave it a dark reputation, yet, it predates and transcends Nazism by millennia. In ancient cosmology, friction between solar energy and Earth's seventh house atmosphere produced visible light, the light from darkness. Spacecraft re-entry heats by friction. Similarly, our atmosphere's interaction with solar rays creates the illusion of daylight. At night, distant suns beyond our universe, stars, shine faintly, visible only when atmospheric light is dimmed. Myths, too, encode ancient science. The womb is a triple state of darkness, fertilization as the spark of intellect bestowed upon sperm, the emergence of light from dark as an allegory for consciousness. In Genesis, let there be light implicitly acknowledges the necessity of an atmosphere for solar friction, and thus for life, warmth, and light. Beyond mythology, we find cosmic genealogy in Sumerian lore. Enki, a half-alien hybrid born to Anu, heavenly ruler, and a draconian princess from Maldek, contested his pure-blood brother Enlil for succession. Their rivalry echoes Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Isaac, Jacob and Esau, brother against brother over inheritance. Enki's son Dumuzi married Ishtar, daughter of Enlil's lineage, and gave birth to Tammuz, who, initially disagreeable by nature, was polarized to agreeableness in the underworld, Shambhala or Hell. There, Tammuz reconciled both houses and became ruler. The Christians later renamed him Yeshua, Jesus Christ, he who brings peace, casting him as the mediator between divine and human. Yet the Bible's depictions often clash with its moral proclamations. God forbids killing yet commands Abraham to slaughter Canaanites. He forbids theft yet promises Abraham the land of Canaan. He is omnipotent yet grows jealous of rival gods. He condemns sacrifice, yet demands human and animal offerings. Meanwhile, Satan, cast down for offering knowledge to humanity, uses the same rituals Catholics, Muslims, and Jews practice: animal sacrifice, ritual blood, sacred feasts. Communion mirrors satanic rites of blood and flesh. Ritual shedding and consumption of blood appears in both holy and profane ceremonies. If these acts define evil, why did religions sanctify them? Finally, we confront the notions of good and evil themselves. Morality, we learn, is a human construct, an attempt to codify natural instincts. A lion eats a lamb without guilt. A human hunts for food or kills in war. Is the lion immoral? Or is it simply fulfilling nature's design? We are beings of spirit granted free will, yet we are judged by moral laws that we did not author. We are threatened with eternal damnation for disobedience, condemned to unquenchable flames, an elemental absurdity lacking physical substance. In the end, we see that every tradition, symbol, and narrative is a mirror, reflecting not divine decree, but the evolving consciousness of humanity. The master teacher guides us not to worship texts or icons, but to master them, to trace their roots back to Africa and to ourselves, so that we may understand the light that emerges from the darkness within. Many people wonder how individuals from vastly different backgrounds, Caucasians, East Asians, South Asians, Africans, can truly coexist in the same environment when each group comes with its own language, traditions and worldviews. At first glance it might seem unnatural for such diverse peoples to intermix. After all, in the animal kingdom lions don't share hunting grounds with tigers, and cats don't buddy up with dogs. Yet humanity has, over millennia, created societies in which people of every hue, faith and lineage live, and often thrive, side by side. From a purely biological perspective, different human populations are not separate species at all but branches of the same tree. When a dark-skinned man and a fair-skinned woman have a child, that child's complexion falls somewhere between the two, a simple reflection of how human genetics blend rather than clash. Unlike polar bears or grizzly bears, whose habitats and mating behaviors remain distinct, humans have always migrated, traded and intermarried. Yes, many still gravitate toward their own cultural enclaves, but history shows that barriers of language and custom can, and do, fall away when commerce, friendship or shared purpose intervene. A parallel emerges in the world of fashion. High-end designers tap into global styles, borrowing cuts, patterns and symbols from Africa, Europe, India, East Asia, and repackage them under their own brand names. A single shirt design can spark a craze, disappear 6 months later, then re-emerge with a fresh logo or a new colorway. That cycle drives profit, but it is at odds with cultural dress codes that endure across generations. The sari, the dashiki, the hanbok or the agbada never become old because they are woven into the fabric of community identity rather than sold as fleeting trends. When we dress in our inherited customs, we wear more than cloth, we wear continuity. Yet fashion's relentless churn also illustrates how we've moved beyond natural patterns. No wild animal shops for a new wardrobe each season or swaps garments to signal status. Humans alone are caught in this loop: buy, flaunt, discard, repeat, always chasing the next must-have logo. In doing so, we reenact an older branding. Centuries ago, enslaved people were marked as property. Today, many of us willingly brand ourselves as walking billboards for luxury labels, trading authentic self-expression for corporate insignia. Beyond the social sphere lie deeper questions of identity and origin. Some trace their names, languages and lineages back to ancient Egypt or even to so-called etheric or extraterrestrial realms. In this view, we descend not only from biological ancestors but from mythic or cosmic progenitors, beings whose names and symbols were inscribed on temple walls in hieroglyphs as talismans of protection. Whether you accept these accounts as literal history or as metaphorical roadmaps, they speak to a human yearning to anchor ourselves in a grand narrative that spans planets and dimensions. That narrative often delves into speculative science, experiments said to have been conducted on Mars by so-called draconians, the debate between Einstein's particle theory of light and Bohr's wave model, or the mysterious dark light consciousness that some link to etheric vibrations beyond hydrogen's subatomic structure. While mainstream physics resolves the wave-particle duality of light through quantum mechanics, recognizing that photons exhibit both behaviors, the idea that observation, or desire, shapes experimental outcome nonetheless echoes the participatory universe of modern thought, where measurement and mind intertwine. Even more fundamental is the story of life itself, how single-celled organisms emerged from Earth's early seas, powered by solar flares and the chemistry of water, methane and ammonia. From these humble beginnings, amoebas dividing, bacteria adapting to every niche, rose the full tapestry of flora and fauna, culminating in primates with opposable thumbs and, ultimately, in us. The same forces that forged coal from star-sprayed hydrogen birthed the organic complexity that makes human culture possible. So can we, East Indian or African or Oriental or Caucasian, truly coexist? Yes, because unlike beasts of prey bound by instinct, humans possess something more powerful than natural separation: imagination. We can choose to see beyond skin-deep difference, to honor each other's traditions and to weave them into a shared tapestry. Nature may set the stage, but it is our culture, transcending fashion's fleeting turns, embracing ancient names, probing the cosmos and celebrating the spark of life, that writes the ongoing story of humanity together. Liquid gold is an exotic, monatomic form of matter that originally circulates in our bloodstream, a substance so rare and powerful that it's sometimes referred to simply as mafkuzet. In its native state, this liquid gold flows freely within the pure bloodlines of the ancient Nagaru, but over countless generations of interbreeding with other human populations, its concentration has been diluted, causing most of us to lose its remarkable properties. According to the teachings of the high priests of Amun, this compound, an anti-aging alloy of iron, magnesium and trace elements in liquid form, slows the aging process, supports cellular vitality, and even confers the ability to warp space and traverse dimensions through specially engineered wormholes. In antiquity, the priesthood would administer liquid gold only to select lineages, mortality-bound women of pure descent, who then passed it on to the emissaries from other worlds. These rituals ensured that the substance remained potent and untainted. But as empires fell and tombs were desecrated, the secret of liquid gold was plundered, bones of pharaohs were ground into powders, and royal flesh was cannibalized under the misguided belief that ingesting it would bestow eternal youth. Today, we see echoes of this vampiric quest for rejuvenation in modern blood banks and the global adoption of infants from remote villages. Hollywood celebrities, it is said, have illegally adopted children of unbroken pure lineage, Madonna, Angelina Jolie, Sandra Bullock, Tom Cruise among them, siphoning off their life force for personal preservation. Similarly, after the Haitian earthquake, operatives from Europe and Ireland reportedly attempted to smuggle Haitian children, whose darker complexions and tight curls betray unadulterated African ancestry, out of the country to harvest their liquid gold. Concurrently, our hospitals have become unwitting laboratories for experimentation. Vast quantities of blood are drawn under the guise of diagnostics, while the very places meant for healing have become hotbeds of superbugs and iatrogenic infections. Just as CSI can retrieve a single smudge of blood from a crime scene with pinpoint accuracy, medical institutions claim to conduct life-saving treatments even as chemotherapy induces proteins that feed tumors, and routine prescriptions function as endless band-aids rather than cures. Pa-Nabab foresaw this degradation decades ago, warning that hospitals would become untrustworthy, vectors of disease rather than sanctuaries. On the frontier of disease, new threats continue to emerge. Antibiotic-resistant superbugs claiming dozens of lives across dozens of states, novel strains of HIV arising in Africa, yet, curious as it may seem, certain individuals there exhibit innate immunity, hinting at genetic defenses yet to be understood. In the realm of celestial alchemy, alchemy itself is no mere myth. Its roots trace back to the Egyptians, whose name Alchemia was later Hellenized, and whose daily practices laid the groundwork for later seekers. Greek and Caucasian adepts traveled to Egypt to witness and appropriate these secrets, often obfuscating their sources. They studied the stars, Orion, Sirius, Draco, and called them the heavens, drawing on ancient texts. Job 9:9 mentions the chambers of the south and Orion among the constellations of heaven, to codify their spiritual cosmology. Dr. York, our modern master teacher, synthesized these disparate traditions, Egyptian, Hebraic, Islamic, Christian, into a unified doctrine. He could field thousands of questions across multiple faiths, weaving together the Sumerian mysteries, Moorish wisdom, and temple rites in a way no single scholar could. Yet, his adversaries accused him of plagiarism, demanding paper credentials and book citations. In response, he meticulously referenced every source, ancient walls of temples, works by Egyptologists like Phil Valentine and J.J. Rogers, Islamic and Judaic authorities, so that seekers could verify and break free from the spell of institutionalized religion. The so-called 360 questions became legendary proof of his mastery, as no academic rival could offer such a comprehensive, cross-disciplinary exposition. Through it all, the true alchemy remains the transformation of consciousness, reclaiming our original liquid gold, understanding that the divine is immanent in our very blood, and transcending the limitations imposed by both ancient and modern dogmas. As we shed the layers of dilution, whether chemical, cultural, or spiritual, we rediscover the monatomic elixir that connects us to the stars, to the priests of ancient Egypt, and to the ultimate possibility of becoming whole once more. Now, before the millennium, our leadership had issued a series of urgent warnings, beginning in January 1999 and intensifying as we approached the year 2000. We were instructed to leave the cities and relocate to more remote, self-sustaining communities. We were told that in the months leading up to and following the turn of the millennium, a cascade of social, environmental, and technological disasters would strike urban centers, everything from airborne viruses and chemical pollutants to computer system failures and martial law interventions by FEMA's so-called Red Dog units. Why leave the cities? Health and safety. Major cities were deemed hotbeds of disease and radiation contamination. Tap water might be poisoned, air laced with bacteria, and ultraviolet radiation had already begun to deform children's health, shrinking ears, enlarged eyes. Underground springs, clean air, and open fields offered the only reliable sources of water and fresh air. Social collapse. Stock markets and computers were predicted to fail, first at the end of 1999 and then again on a later, separate computers go dark date. Brokers and investors, living year to year on digital systems, would be hardest hit. Urban dwellers dependent on week-to-week paychecks would struggle most. Martial law. Under emergency executive orders, FEMA's Red Dog brigades could seal off cities, impose curfews, and enforce compliance. No matter how powerful you think you are, these specialized units are trained to break resistance and restore order by force. What should we build instead? Our authority has urged us to establish small, defensible enclaves where we can, grow our own food, plant gardens and orchards, harvest our own water, tap underground springs instead of municipal lines. Live off the grid, practice candlelit nights, learn to function without electricity. Stay fit and ready, daily walks, physical training, so we can run if we must. This is not a temporary retreat but the founding of a new culture, with its own calendar, its own economy, its own spiritual and social structures. By shedding the Gregorian calendar and its holidays and by refusing the symbols of mainstream consumer culture, we free ourselves from the collapse that system is undergoing. According to classified briefings, once a national emergency is declared, the president may invoke several secret executive orders. One branch of FEMA, dubbed Red Dog, is specifically tasked with urban pacification. They can impose martial law. They can seal off neighborhoods, conduct warrantless searches, and detain civilians. Their operations are swift and brutal. No individual is too big or too prepared to resist them effectively. Our only protection is to build communities that won't attract their attention and that we can defend on our own terms. Our doctrine holds that Earth itself is a living biosphere, a grand experiment conducted by multiple extraterrestrial races over millennia. Evidence cited includes genetic anomalies, polydactyly, amniotic deformities. Sudden bursts of cosmic energy and intentional missile launches into Jupiter to manipulate our sun. Daytime UFO sightings and implanted operatives in global power structures. Whether you accept it or not, you are encouraged to research ancient tablets and cross-cultural myths that describe interactions between human ancestors and off-world beings. Armageddon is often portrayed as a final, cataclysmic war between good and evil. In our teaching, it is twofold: internal struggle, each individual must confront personal demons of fear, greed, and complacency. Global conflict, we see it unfolding in Bosnia, Sudan, Oklahoma City, and in the constant cycle of violence and political upheaval worldwide. Rather than fight from within collapsing systems, our leadership counsels, "Come out of her, my people," Revelation 18, remove yourself from doomed structures, and build a society based on peace, self-reliance, and shared values. Practical steps right now: relocate, identify suitable land in rural areas before government restrictions tighten. Organize, pool skills, farmers, builders, healers, to erect shelters, drill wells, and start gardens. Equip, stockpile seeds, simple hand tools, medical supplies, and water filters. Train, institute daily physical drills, practice low-tech living, candlelight, wood stoves. Unplug, gradually wean yourselves off reliance on city infrastructure, learn to thrive without municipal power, water, or internet. Time is of the essence. The hourglass is nearly empty. Those who delay will find themselves at the mercy of forces far beyond their control. For those ready to act, this is the moment to secure your future, and the future of your children, by building a community worth defending. So will Armageddon be a continuous war? Many ancient prophecies speak of Armageddon as a prolonged conflict, one that extends well beyond 6,000 years. Those who interpret the Leviathan books, specifically Book 1, Part 1, describe a timeline stretching to the year 2029, when the seeds of a third world war will come to fruition. All of this suggests we are living through the very years the ancient seers predicted. Earth's gravitational pull is the primary reason we experience hundreds of asteroid and comet encounters each year. Space debris, traveling through the solar system, can be pulled into Earth's orbit and, sometimes, its atmosphere. Astronomy textbooks explain that our planet's mass attracts these objects, causing frequent impacts and near misses. While we cannot stop these celestial visitors, awareness of their trajectories allows for targeted preparations. We cannot directly halt tectonic or cosmic forces, but many believe preparation lies in spiritual and esoteric training. The ancient mystic order of America, for instance, teaches techniques for transformation and escape should global catastrophes threaten human survival. These methods mirror those attributed to the inhabitants of Atlantis, and they emphasize personal readiness through knowledge and ritual. Countless books, movies, and news programs focus on asteroid impacts and cataclysmic war. This constant bombardment of apocalyptic imagery may serve to desensitize us or to prepare elites for evacuation plans, often tied to identifying regions most at risk of impact. Civil defense maps highlight potential ground zeros, urging residents of certain areas to relocate if a threatening object is detected. According to prophecy, one of nature's emissaries, sent every 25,000 years, has come to live among us. He offers unprecedented knowledge, answering questions about our origins, genetics, and the cosmic cycles governing Earth. Yet many resist his teachings, preferring familiar religious or ideological comfort. Despite this, his revelations bridge science, spirituality, and ancient lore, promising a path to the pure emerald light of creation. Earth's axis wobbles, shifting geomagnetic poles and, according to some interpretations, opening portals through which spiritual beings can enter. Cities such as Atlanta, New York, and Los Angeles are cited as modern capitals where these entities congregate. Body piercings, extreme sports, and other forms of expression are seen not merely as fashion statements but as invitations to foreign intelligences. To guard against possession or manipulation, spiritual practitioners advise simplifying one's life. Consistent diet, music, dress, and associations create a stable identity that resists external influence. Questions arise about whether global computer networks or satellite arrays might block or amplify a cosmic green light, the true life force described in prophetic writings. In truth, this force is not a physical being but an ever-present spiritual energy, manifested through human consciousness. Those attuned to it can transcend ignorance and reconnect with the primal essence that once ruled Earth during its first 6,000 years. The term whole life denotes a state of complete understanding and alignment with cosmic laws. Ancient scriptures describe cycles of renewal every 25,000 years, during which mankind must be guided back to the fundamental truths of existence. Before any great transformation, whether planetary catastrophe or spiritual ascension, preparatory figures, or vessels, descend to instruct humanity. Only by cultivating awareness can we house the higher intelligences required for our collective survival. Upon physical death, the body returns to the soil through dissipation, decomposition into tangible matter. Simultaneously, the soul expands back into the universe, rejoining an intangible cosmic web. Ancient teachings emphasize that while our physical form decays, our true essence reintegrates with the infinite. True awakening involves recognizing the latent divinity within each person. Prophecies often cite the number 144,000 as the threshold for unlocking a global shift in consciousness. When that many individuals achieve a self-aware state, the collective can bridge the spiritual and material realms, ushering in a new epoch of harmony. Human calendars, Gregorian, Islamic, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, offer varied accounts of chronology. Yet cosmic cycles operate on scales of tens of thousands of years, aligned with planetary precession and galactic rhythms. We find ourselves at the turning point of these great cycles, facing the choice between repeating past mistakes or embracing a higher destiny. Early in our evolution, before physical eyes and noses shaped perception, consciousness existed in a more fluid, etheric state, likened to air pockets in which life drifted without rigid form. Prophetic instructors use familiar analogies so that we may imagine realms beyond our current sensory limits. Across millennia, humanity has faced judgment and renewal. Now, at the crossroads of cosmic alignment and technological power, we must choose transformation. By studying ancient wisdom, simplifying our lives, and expanding our awareness, we prepare not only for war and cosmic hazards but for our own evolution into beings of pure light. The time to act is now, before the next cycle dawns and Earth calls out for her stewards to stand once more as supreme beings of the emerald light. Now, the experiment commonly referred to as the Philadelphia experiment did not, in fact, involve Albert Einstein. He was back in Princeton working on the Manhattan Project. The physicist most directly tied to that effort was Nikola Tesla, who, along with colleagues such as John von Neumann, sought to render naval vessels invisible to enemy detection during World War II. Their first, unmanned trials succeeded, but on August 12, 1943, what some traditions call the Earth's birthday, when the planet's vital rhythm peaked, a crewed destroyer escort vanished into a hyperspace lock. 2 sailors reportedly dropped off the deck, only to reappear decades later in 1983, as if 40 years of time had been locked out of their trajectory. This notion of time locking is echoed in our broader culture. Since that fateful day, many argue, nothing genuinely new emerges. Fashion cycles, music revivals, historical reboots all suggest we're caught in a 40-year loop. Breaking free, according to these accounts, requires an outside intervention, an ancient one stepping in to reset human awareness and usher us back into real time. What, then, is real time? Our everyday hours and calendars are social constructs. Some people wake at dawn, others measure days by digital clocks, still others chart time by the sun's arc, as agrarian societies have done for millennia. In contrast, the ancients measured time on cosmic and earthly cycles, river floods, like the Nile, celestial alignments, seasons, a true time bound to Earth's living pulse rather than arbitrary midnight to midnight ticks imposed by human convention. At the heart of this worldview lies the concept of now. Rather than treating past, present, and future as discrete slices, yesterday, today, tomorrow, the ancients saw time as a spiral, always continuous, each moment enfolded within every other. Now is not merely this second on your clock but the total of all existence. Your personal time began 3 months before conception, when the mother's medulla oblongata first assembled the subtle energies that would become you. It extends through gestation and beyond birth, which is simply the transition from one realm of being to another. There is no clean cutoff. If yesterday never truly ends, how can we say the future doesn't already exist in seed form? This non-linear sense of time also reframes purpose. You have always existed in potential, so too have all your ancestors, and you chose to manifest in this era because something about these conditions intrigued you. When people ask what is my purpose, the answer may lie in understanding that their gifts and obligations align not with the social calendar but with a deeper timeline. If you feel ahead of your time, it may be because your destiny belongs to a future cycle not yet fully realized by the wider world. Religions have long borrowed these themes, Noah's flood, prophetic numbers like 144,000, to anchor spiritual authority, but often overlay them with spells of ignorance. The number 144,000, for example, appears in Revelation but originally stems from Egyptian accounts of 144,000 beings aboard a great craft. By transplanting that figure into Christian eschatology, early authors both enslaved and captivated later generations, hiding the number's cosmic and genetic significance. Likewise, daily rituals and socially enforced phrases, God bless you after a sneeze, mask deeper forces at play. In sneeze, when the heart stutters mid-breath, ancestors knew a divine spark flickered at the threshold of life and death. Blessing that moment, they honored the struggle. Over centuries, our phrase bless twisted away from its original sense. God, you almost had me, into rote politeness, further distancing us from the living intelligence of the planet, and of ourselves. In every myth and prophecy, Dogon, Navajo, Egyptian, there is a promise that descendants or returning ones will reappear to rescue humanity, guide a remnant through cataclysm, and restore cosmic harmony. When we see hurricanes, floods, droughts, and we recall Noah's story, we realize we are now the protagonists of that ancient myth. The preparation is not in external allegiance to texts or institutions, but in relearning real time, untangling the spells of division, racism, religious literalism, gender wars, that keep us blind to our shared divine heritage. The true Savior, then, is not a distant figure from a book, but the awakening within each of us, the one who remembers that a human being can be a deity, Khalifa, the vice-regent of the earth, the one entrusted to steward life itself. As conflicts rage, north and south, black and white, the greatest spell is believing the enemy is always out there. In truth, the discord comes from fallen forces that wear every color under the sun, whose first incarnations were as black-skinned beings. Only by reclaiming our birthright as co-creators with the living planet can we break the enchantments that hold us in fear, and step fully into the eternal now. Finally, when you talk about someone being psychotic, that's exactly what it is, psychotic. How do you know? Because our society has conditioned us to ignore facts, to remain ignorant. We live in America, yet we call Caucasus the devil. He's wearing a French-cut suit, speaks our language, but we refuse to see past the facade. Instead we chant, he's the devil, and demand he strip his clothes off, as if his appearance alone reveals his nature. But true liberation comes when we stop blaming everyone else, when we recognize that we are responsible for all that happens to us because we have chosen the ignorance we live under. Ignorance simply means big ignoring the facts that confront us every day. Some people won't believe something exists just because they haven't heard of it. They've never heard of a CD player, a telephone, the Amish. Does that mean those things don't exist? Of course not. Yet when they hear of new knowledge, a religion outside the Bible or Quran, they reject it outright. We must first accept that we are at fault for our condition. That is step 1. Step 2 is to decide to change it. Step 3, admit we don't know how to change it and seek out those who do. Then we begin by correcting the basics, eating native, natural foods, exercising, dressing with dignity, adopting a proper diet and appearance, and shedding the behaviors that reinforce negative stereotypes about us. We have more books than we ever need. If we just started reading today, we could never finish. Yet many have questions because they've been deprived of answers. Whose fault is that? Not the white man's, it's ours, because the resources and opportunities to learn are here. The key is questioning everything, question every teacher, every scripture. Demand proof. If they cannot explain how time can stand still, as when one sailor was sent back in time to 1943 to shut down a hyperspace generator, lost an hour, and that hour explains why we observe daylight saving time, then move on to someone who can. Read the books, Man from Planet Risk, the NWPU calendar, the Teacher's Guide, and then come back with informed questions about symbols, about the 4-year versus 1-hour time lapse, about Roswell, and about the so-called locked time vortex. We must understand our origins, and that includes recognizing that we are the product of an experiment in genetic manipulation. The first human beings were born of goddesses who gave birth to creatures, some malformed, some with limbs in the wrong places. These genetic anomalies persist in our DNA today. That is why breeding matters. When ancient birth goddesses chose which beings to carry, they were shaping the species. Today, if we want children of the mental capacity to greet our returning ancestors, those original gods, then we must apply eugenic principles based on genetics, not on cuteness or popularity. This is an experiment unlike anything America has seen, a society that creates its own language, culture, music, dress, food, all of it from scratch. That scares the powers that be, because if we succeed, if we unify around a common mind and culture, there will be nothing to stop us. They defame our teachings, spread lies about our organization, but they never address the information itself. They attack hearsay because they cannot refute facts. As for the subterranean world, beneath every major city there are sewers inhabited by reptilians and greys. They use our large gatherings, sports stadiums, concerts, as abduction grounds, luring people with bright lights, manipulating them for genetic experiments and feeding on our energy. They exist in plain sight, sometimes even in human form. Our error is focusing only on what we see with 2 eyes. We mistake a human body for a human soul. But someone like Jeffrey Dahmer looked human until you learned of his appetite for human flesh, demonic influences riding the notes of hip-hop and R&B, space between beats where nothingness reigns, where negative entities thrive. Our original scripts were pictographs, parables that transcended language. When they took us away from pictures and into scripts, Hebrew, Arabic, Latin, they introduced confusion and interpretation. But the pictograph for sun is universal, it evades the ambiguities of words. If we return to our language, our symbols, our parables, we remove the distortions that have kept us enchanted. Restoration begins when we reclaim history, understand our story, always a mystery to those who oppress us. Keep questioning. That's why Pharaoh Autumn Ray came, to turn on the lighting side, the true, pure, original green light of knowledge, reflected through our ozone layer, and to bring us back to the pure illumination of our ancestors. It is not the greedy, jealous God of mainstream religion who dictates destiny, it is our choices and our responsibility. The Elohim, the group of beings who said in Genesis, "Let us make man in our image," are not a solitary deity on a throne but a council of creators, each manifesting different features, giving us the power to reason, to build safe havens, to grow our own food, to escape sirens and drugs and disease. When you hear that someone died because it was their time, they refer to destiny, not an all-controlling God. Our ancient teachers, the Elohim, gave us free will to shape our environment and our fate. Heartbeats and breathing are involuntary functions, but aligning our pineal, pituitary, adrenal, and other glands, our seats, requires voluntary effort. When aligned, our bodies vibrate in harmony, the pineal gland blossoms like a lotus, and we reconnect to higher states of consciousness. Is there a perfect being? Models define perfection as tall, slim, particular hair and eye colors. But true perfection is a perfected being, one who has mastered all questions. Autumn Ray is that perfect being for us, and his purpose is to bring others to perfection. No matter your faith, once you encounter these truths, you will not die, as mainstream dogma claims you must if you see God, but you will gain life, purpose, and the factual basis to claim I have seen my God, and I live. So remember, God in Genesis is Elohim, a council of beings. When Paul saw a light on the road to Damascus, he encountered Elohim's true light. Read Exodus 33:20, "No man shall see me and live," and then read Matthew 5:8, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Reconcile those by rejecting the false dichotomy. When you purify your heart through knowledge, you can see the Elohim without dying, because those who have become pure reflect the light rather than perish in it. Keep asking questions. Learn the laws so that when you enter their courts, you, raised on ignorance, you know the rules. Replace blame with responsibility, ignorance with facts, and you will step into the light of your true heritage. That is the way out of the spell of ignorance and into the realm of freedom.